After almost a year of waiting, we finally have another trailer with some news on Splatoon Raiders, with the release date of July 23rd and new amiibo in tow. Let's start by talking about our opponents in the campaign. Turns out this time, we're going against the Salmonids. There's a lot to look at here, but I have seen a few people talk about the concern that the enemies are reused. We've fought them in 2 salmon runs before, and a bunch of them are just returning again, such as a lot of the basic enemies, the stingers, steelheads, lids, fish sticks, and so on. They do all sport new looks and possibly some combat changes, but personally, I don't see this as a big issue. They've never been a part of a campaign before and are a huge part of the game's story, especially after Splatoon 3's Hero Mode. And I think the existing ones will provide variety as long as there's plenty of new ones, which I think we're gonna see, as I'll get into later. They fit the world very well, and it's interesting to learn more about them, so I'm personally excited for it. As for new changes about them, there's a few things to take a look at. Sometimes we can see them spawning from a few devices that just seem to launch them into action, and there's a few new Salmonids to take a look at. The main one that I notice is this flying one that seems to be launching toxic mist at the mech in this clip. Another new enemy is this big guy. It seems to be a bit more of a generic tank type boss for the Salmonids, clearly being able to absorb a lot of damage and being a heavy hitter if anything is indicated by how far they can launch that tank. Not too much we know about it other than that though. And there's also this smaller one that is pretty much just the sprinkler side order enemy, so that's gonna be fun for people to deal with again. In addition to that, it looks like these Salmonids will probably get stronger later into the campaign. There's only one clip I have for this, but you can see this stinger here is so tall that they go off the top of the screen, and from looking at the clip more closely, all of the rays from this one are from that stinger. So my guess is as you progress throughout the campaign and get stronger, you're gonna find some much stronger boss Salmonids. There is also one Salmonid towards the end of the trailer that is probably a new King Salmonid, or maybe just some really amped up boss one. I'd also like to point out one more really interesting thing about this. Splatoon 3 had a data mine a long time ago pointing to scrapped salmon run content, some of which might be used here. For example, there was an underground mode that had harder runs as the quota would increase by larger, and there would be these big power eggs that drop. And guess what? That kind of lines up here. On the minimap, we can see a dungeons option, likely being this underground area we can see over here. And look what happens upon defeating the last King Salmonid. A giant power egg drops. Another scrapped Salmonid was one that used Toxic Mist as an attack, and like I said earlier, there is one that does this right here. I think it's just so cool that this old stuff might have been moved here rather than just totally canned. There's also a possibility that this whole mode could have been wave 3 or 4 from all the way back in the first DLC trailer is probably also an idea floating around right now, and I do think that's a high possibility, but maybe the scope just got too large, or Splatoon 3's delays played a factor when they needed something for the Switch 2. I have no idea. That gets a bit more speculative than I want to get into personally. So next up, let's talk about the progression. Because from what we can see in the trailer, this game really emphasizes a scaled up version of Side Order. The damage numbers, upgrade system, and enemy hordes all remind me of that mode, and I think it's safe to say by upgrading our weapon and characters throughout the journey, it's gonna have a similar vibe. Which is why I'm personally really glad it's going to be able to be used with the co-op option. I think that adds a lot of replayability, and for a long time, I wanted a campaign I could do with friends. So I can't wait to see how this plays out. Speaking of that progression, it seems to be split into a whole host of things. First of which are your gadgets. Rather than your subs, it seems you get 2 gadgets that you build throughout your journey, attached on your left and right side and used with the L and R buttons. This seems to be made from a whole host of things you find along the journey. For example, this Splatchet, nice name by the way, seems to be made from a scrapper door, so defeating enemies might unlock specific upgrades and tools you can pick out. In addition to that, there's a whole bunch of other perks, such as the usual side order stuff we see as you explore, a small bit for relic power, which I'd imagine is the double jump we saw earlier. Maybe we could see something like a Pearl drone gliding in the future. And of course, we have a variety of weapons you find on the way from the base game, all sporting new looks, the mechs that each member of Deep Cut will be in, as you get one of them for each level, and they also have upgrades attached to them, and Deep Cut has special weapons, such as surfing on Big Man, and using Shiver Shark as an aimable killer whale from Splatoon 1. I'd imagine Fry will be something to do with the eels. All of which are just really cool. There is a whole ton of stuff to customize or power up, and it again just points to and supports the idea that this is a much larger scale than something like Side Order was. That's all the main features, but there's a bunch of small stuff to talk about that I don't think fit a particular category. The game is going to be $50 digital and $60 physical, which I think is a surprisingly good price point for the scale the game looks to be in. On the character character selection screen, there's now a clearer option to pick the voice for your character, and the models seem like they're really well animated in this. I just can't understate how good this game looks, especially if you look at the trailer in 4K. I also want to add that the backgrounds are another aspect worth praising. Seeing some of the screenshots posted to the Splatoon Twitter account, you can really see how much detail there is, as well as the fact that there's finally lava in a Splatoon game. Yep, surprise, surprise, this is the first time we've seen it, at least as far as I'm aware, and it looks amazing. The design of some of the UI features includes the spiraling design. We have new hairstyles for Inklings and Octolings that I hope, but don't expect, to be ported to multiplayer Splatoon 3 as well, and some other small gameplay features like calling the mech to jump to you and being able to jump off of them in the game. It also seems like you'll be building and upgrading the ship hub, which is a cool idea. Let's talk Switch 2 stuff. The game is a whopping 20 gigabytes. That is 10 more than Bonanza and around the scale of Mario Kart World for reference. This could definitely indicate a whole lot of content. I'd imagine there's also possibility for other Switch 2 features like 120 frames per second or mouse mode, given again, this one is exclusive to it. They seem like they would work perfectly for Splatoon 3, and this might be some copium, but maybe the input delay could be a little bit better too? We got no idea. There is a ton of potential here that we have to see. Finally is the amiibo. They seem to give you some outfits at least, but hopefully they do a little more given they're $25 each. One of the editors for this video, Cookie, says this game seems very Monster Hunter-esque. You do raids, collect loot, upgrade your stuff, and do harder raids, hopefully alongside a cool story for the game. And I think it's going to be really cool. There's one last aspect to talk about here, and that's Splatoon 3. When Raiders was originally announced, Splatoon 3 got some content updates. And of course, a little bit ago, we got 11.0 with a few more updates. So, are we done with content? Or what's going on exactly? I don't know. I think it's possible that we could see more Splatoon 3 updates alongside Raiders, but I think it's more likely that it's not happening. To me, these updates were a way to hold over fans until Raiders came out. Now that Raiders is going to be here, I just don't really see that much of a need to update the game. It would be nice to fill out lobbies, and, well, you know, as a Splatoon player, I'd love to see more Splatoon content like third kits for all weapons, but I'm not really sure the incentive is there yet. And it might seem kind of crazy, but once we get to September, Splatoon 3 will have been out for a whopping 4 years. So, I don't know. How much longer can they really put in major updates for this game? I guess that's something we have to find out. Personally, though, I would keep my expectations pretty low. I hope I'm wrong, though. Anyway, Raiders looks exciting. It's a unique mode, and personally, I think that a spin-off for the series is a huge step into it becoming even larger than it is now. So this game could be a huge start to even further success for the series, and I am very invested in that. I'll be looking forward to playing it later in the summer when it launches. Let me know what you guys think, and if you're excited for this game as well, and I'll see you all next time.